2027 Atiku Obi Unite August 18 Summit tests opposition's battle plan against Tinubu. What if Nigeria's opposition finally succeeds in doing what it has struggled to achieve for years? What if Atiku Abubakar, Peter Obi and other opposition leaders can put their differences aside and build one political machine capable of challenging President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in 2027. That possibility is once again gaining attention. A fresh attempt to bring Nigeria's opposition forces together is now underway, with the G100 saying it has completed its first round of consultations with opposition leaders, and now attention is turning to August 18, 2026, when an opposition summit is scheduled to take place in Abuja. The meeting could become an important step toward a broader opposition alliance. But there is a much more bigger question. Can these powerful politicians actually agree on who should lead them? Because defeating the ruling APC is one thing, deciding who gets the presidential ticket is another. Welcome to Nigeria Wave. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications for more detailed analysis of Nigeria's political road to 2027. Today, we examine the proposed August 18 Opposition Summit, the G100's Unity Initiative, the Atiku and Obi equation, as well as the role of Seyi Makinde and other opposition leaders, and why the question of personal ambition could ultimately determine whether the opposition succeeds or fails in 2027. According to the G100, the organization has concluded an initial round of consultations with leaders of 6 opposition political parties. The group said it engaged national chairmen, presidential candidates and running mates in what it described as frank, constructive and encouraging discussions. The consultations reportedly involved the African Democratic Party (ADC), the Nigeria Democratic Party (NDC), the Allied People's Movement (APM), as well as the People's Democratic Party (PDP), the People's Redemption Party (PRP), and the Social Democratic Party (SDP). The G100 said these discussions were deliberately kept away from the media because political negotiations of this magnitude can easily collapse when every conversation becomes public. The G100 therefore appears to be trying a different approach. Talk first, negotiate privately, build confidence, and only then bring the major players together publicly. That is the thinking behind the proposed August 18 summit. The G100 has said that the summit of opposition parties will provide a structured platform for discussions on how the opposition can work together ahead of the 2027 election. But Nigerians should pay attention to the word structured, because the opposition has had plenty of conversations about unity. The problem has always been converting these conversations into an actual political structure. What happens after the meeting? Who makes the decision? How is the presidential candidate chosen? What happens to politicians who lose the selection process? How are party structures merged or coordinated? Who controls the campaign? How are resources distributed? And perhaps the most sensitive question, who gives up his ambition for the larger coalition? Those questions are far more important than a group photograph at the end of the summit. Let's start with Atiku Abubakar. Atiku is one of the most experienced opposition politicians in Nigeria. He has contested the presidency multiple times and has built a substantial political network over several decades. His supporters believe he remains one of the strongest candidates capable of challenging the APC, but an opposition alliance creates a difficult situation for him. If the coalition wants one presidential candidate, Atiku may have to compete with other major figures, and this is where the negotiations becomes complicated. Would Atiku agree to support another candidate? Would he accept a position outside the presidency? Would his political structure support a candidate who defeats him in the selection process. These are questions that cannot be answered with political slogans. They require genuine compromise. Then there is Peter Obi. Obi represents a completely different political constituency. His 2023 presidential campaign generated enormous enthusiasm among young Nigerians and voters, demanding a departure from Nigeria's traditional political establishment. For many of his supporters, the idea of opposition unity is attractive, but there is only a condition. They want to know exactly what the alliance represents. Is this simply an agreement to remove the APC from power, or is it a new political project with a clear program for governing Nigeria? That distinction is critical, because if Obi supporters see the coalition as merely another elite arrangement where political leaders negotiate positions among themselves, they may not embrace it. But if the coalition presents itself as a genuine national alternative, Obi's political strength could become extremely important. Kwankwaso brings another power base. Rabiu Kwankwaso adds another major dimension to the equation for the upcoming 2027 presidential election. Peter Obi announced former Kano State Governor Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso as his running mate under the banner of the Nigeria Democratic Congress. His political influence, particularly in Kano and parts of northern Nigeria, gives him a significant bargaining position. Any serious opposition coalition must consider the northern vote, and that means Kwankwaso cannot simply be ignored. But again, the presidential ticket becomes the problem. If Atiku wants it, if Obi wants it, then who gets it? This is where the coalition's ability to negotiate will be tested, because the opposition cannot have more than one presidential candidate and call itself a united presidential coalition. Eventually, somebody has to step aside. Seyi Makinde also adds an important political dimension. As governor of Oyo State and a prominent figure from the southwest, his participation could become relevant to any attempts to construct a geographically balanced opposition alliance. The Southwest presents a particularly sensitive political calculation. The APC has substantial political strength in the region. Therefore, any opposition coalition seeking to compete nationally would need a strategy for the Southwest. Makinde could potentially play an important role in that conversation, but his involvement also raises questions about the future direction of the PDP and other established opposition structures. Could the coalition eventually become bigger than the individual parties, or will party interest ultimately prevent deeper integration? This is where we reach the heart of the matter. Who leads the opposition? Imagine a scenario where all the major opposition leaders agree that Tinubu must be challenged. That is easy. Now imagine that they must select one presidential candidate. That is where the real fight begins. Atiku has supporters, Obi has supporters. Other political figures also have presidential ambitions. Each camp believes his candidate has the strongest chance, and each camp can present arguments to support that position. So how do they decide? One possibility is consensus. The leaders could negotiate privately and agree on one candidate. This would be politically convenient, but it could also create resentment. Imagine a politician being told you have a strong political structure, but another candidate has been chosen. Would that politician simply accept the decision? And more importantly, would his supporters accept it? Another possibility is a coalition primary. All major contenders could compete. The winner becomes the presidential candidate. On paper, this appears democratic, but there is a potential problem. What happens to the losing candidate? Do they remain loyal to the coalition, or do they leave and contest independently? The opposition has already experienced the consequences of vote fragmentation. Repeating that mistake could weaken the entire project. There could also be negotiated arrangements. One candidate gets the presidential ticket, another receives the vice presidential slot. Others are given important roles within the coalition or future government structure. This is perhaps the most traditional political approach, but it comes with another challenge. The politicians must trust one another, and Nigerian politics has repeatedly shown how difficult that can be. Now let's look at the other side. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the APC. For the ruling party, opposition fragmentation could be strategically useful. If opposition voters are divided among multiple presidential candidates, the APC may benefit, but if the opposition manages to consolidate its major political blocks behind one candidate, the calculation changes. A single opposition candidate potentially combine different voting blocks. Imagine bringing together the Atiku political network, the Obi movement, the Kwankwaso political structure, the Makinde factor, and the structures of several opposition parties. That would create a much more formidable electoral machine. But again, that is only possible if the politicians can agree. Also worthy of noting is that unity does not automatically mean victory. This point is extremely important. Even if the opposition unites, victory is not guaranteed. A presidential election is not won simply because politicians sign an agreement. They need organization, they need polling agents, they need grassroots structures, they need campaign financing, they need a coherent message, they need credible candidates, and they need voters. Most importantly, they need Nigerians to believe that the coalition is offering something better. This means the coalition has two battles ahead. Battle number one, unite the politicians. Battle number two, convince the voters. The first battle is already proving difficult. The second could be even more challenging. There are several potential threats. The first is personal ambition. Every major politician believes he has something to offer. The second is regional calculation. Nigeria's presidential elections are deeply influenced by regional voting patterns. The third is party structure. Existing political parties may not want to surrender their identities or machinery. The fourth is supporter resistance. Politicians can agree at leadership level while their supporters reject the agreement. And the fifth is trust. Can these politicians genuinely trust one another long enough to execute a joint campaign? That may ultimately be the biggest question. The G100 says it does not intend to dictate the outcome. That could be important. Its role is described as facilitating dialogue, building confidence, and creating the conditions for the parties to discuss difficult questions. That means the G100 must remain credible to all sides. If any major political camp believes the organization is favoring another politician, the process could quickly lose credibility. The G100 therefore has to walk a very narrow line. It must encourage unity without imposing unity. It must facilitate negotiations without becoming the political boss. And it must keep discussions sufficiently private while maintaining public confidence in the process. What should Nigerians expect from this August 18 summit? When the opposition leaders meet, don't only listen to the speeches. Watch what they actually agree to. Who attends the summit? The attendance list itself could reveal how seriously the major politicians view the process. Second, do they agree on a roadmap? A roadmap would be more significant than another declaration of unity. Third, do they establish a mechanism for choosing a presidential candidate? This could be the biggest breakthrough. Fourth, do the politicians demonstrate the willingness to sacrifice? This is the ultimate test. Fifth, do they address party structures? The coalition that exists only at the leadership level may struggle at the grassroots. Sixth, how do their supporters react? The leaders may shake hands, but will the supporters accept the deal? And finally, does the coalition grow? If additional opposition parties and influential politicians join, the initiative could become much more consequential. At the end of the day, The opposition problem may not be a shortage of politicians. It may not even be a shortage of voters. The problem is coordination. Nigeria could potentially witness one of the most consequential opposition realignments ahead of 2027. But it will only happen if the politicians are prepared to make difficult choices, because everybody wants to win. Everybody wants influence. Everybody believes his political structure is important, but a coalition requires something different. It requires compromise. It requires trust. And sometimes it requires one politician to accept that another person may have to lead. That is the real test. The August 18 summit, therefore, should not be viewed simply as another political meeting. It could be the beginning of a serious opposition negotiation, but it could also expose the very divisions the opposition is trying to overcome. If Atiku, Obi, Kwankwaso, Makinde and other opposition leaders can develop a credible mechanism for resolving their differences, Nigeria could enter the 2027 election with a much more competitive opposition structure. But if personal ambition overwhelms collective strategy, the opposition could remain divided, and that could give the APC a significant advantage. So the real question ahead of August 18 is not, can the opposition unite? The real question is, who is willing to sacrifice enough to make opposition unity possible? Because in politics, unity is not created by handshakes. It is created by compromises. What do you think? Should Atiku, Peter Obi and Rabiu Kwankwaso form a single opposition ticket against Tinubu in 2027? And if they do, who should lead the ticket? Is it Atiku or Peter Obi or even Rabiu Kwankwaso? Or should the opposition choose another consensus candidate? Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Nigeria Wave and turn on notifications for more detailed analysis of Nigeria's political road to 2027. Thanks for watching.